West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Here is the serving Republican Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina on that movie, on Black Panther. He says it is, quote, created by an agnostic Jew and put to film by a satanic Marxist. He calls it, quote, this trash that was only created to pull the shekels out of your Schwarze pockets. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. Tomorrow on Super Tuesday, he's actually going to be running in the North Carolina primary to try to become his party's nominee for governor of the great state of North Carolina. Here he is calling survivors of school gun massacres, quote, media prostitutes, as in prostitutes, but prostitutes. He calls them spoiled little bastards who need to shut up. Again, this is for kids who lived through a school shooting that killed 17 of their classmates. They need to shut up. He calls public school teachers, quote, wicked people. And not for nothing, he says this about the Holocaust. He says, quote, Hitler disarming millions of Jews and then marching them off to concentration camps is a bunch of hogwash. He is the Republican Party's leading candidate to be their party's nominee for governor of the state of North Carolina. He will be on the ballot tomorrow in that state. He's already lieutenant governor in North Carolina. On Friday in Florida, Republicans in that state legislature passed yet another new law to restrict any teaching about racism in the United States. This happened just this past Friday, just a couple days ago in Florida. And in the debate over this new Florida bill, one Republican Florida state representative said that while this bill overall will restrict teaching about racism and things like slavery in Florida, he said there is one specific thing that he wanted to make sure is included in public education in Florida from here on out. He said while he supports this bill, he does want to make sure everybody's aware that slaves were, quote, paid for their work. And so he wants to make sure that's taught in schools. And then he voted for the bill. This, of course, comes in Florida after the state's Republican governor tried to claim during his presidential campaign that there were actually a lot of underappreciated benefits of slavery for the people who were enslaved. The chair of the Florida Democratic Party put out a statement in response, clearly just mystified, saying, quote, Florida Republicans are hell-bent on teaching our children that slavery wasn't bad. And it is hard to argue. I know it's insane, but it keeps happening. Pop over to Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, Republicans control the state government there too, and like just about everywhere, that's true. Oklahoma Republicans have now banned abortion in almost every circumstance, but that apparently is not enough for them. Oklahoma Republicans are now moving a new bill that would create a state registry of every woman who does still find a way to get an abortion. I wonder what Oklahoma Republicans will want to do with a state database of women who have undergone abortions. I'm sure they want it for only the most respectful and responsible reasons. Other lawmakers are warning that the way the Oklahoma bill is written, it looks like it's also, in addition to creating a registry of women who have had abortions, it also seems intended to ban contraception, including forms of contraception like the IUD. That's what Oklahoma Republicans are up to. In Alabama, you may remember the 9 Republican justices on the Alabama Supreme Court issued a unanimous ruling that effectively outlawed fertility treatment in that state. After Alabama's Supreme Court Republicans did that, Democrats in Congress in Washington introduced federal legislation to protect fertility treatment and protect IVF. That legislation was blocked by Republican U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. There are 219 Republicans in Congress right now. In the House, there's 219. Of that 219 number of Republicans, 125 of them are co-sponsors of legislation that would ban IVF. And arguably many popular forms of contraception as well. 125 House Republicans, more than half the Republicans in the House, co-sponsored that, including the Republican Speaker of the House. 125 of them. 195 of them voted against contraception, full stop. The Right to Contraception Act was introduced by Democrats after the Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. The right to contraception. Only 8 Republicans in Congress voted for that. 195 voted against. And let's just stick with healthcare just for a second. Florida again. Florida, they are now contending with a super worrying outbreak of measles. Measles, like it's the 1800s or something. One of the most transmissible pathogens on Earth. And one we don't typically have to worry about anymore in this country because for 60 freaking years, we've had a totally effective vaccine against measles. Except in Florida, Republicans picked a very special state surgeon general who's now telling Florida parents, who am I to suggest that perhaps kids should be vaccinated against measles?
Yesterday, the Florida Department of Health released a letter from Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo emphasizing how contagious measles is, but did not urge parents to vaccinate their children.
He does not, which is an interesting letter from a Surgeon General.
Beyond who am I to say your kids should be vaccinated, the hand Republican-picked Florida Surgeon General wouldn't even say that kids with measles should stay home from school, while they're infectious and symptomatic with one of the most transmissible, potentially fatal pathogens known to mankind. Measles in Florida. Not to be outdone, now the Republican Party's leading presidential candidate is saying on the stump that he will withhold all funding, not a penny, from any school anywhere in America if kids have to be vaccinated to come to school. Kids have to be vaccinated all over the country, everywhere, against measles and mumps and polio. I mean, it's been true for decades. It's been true for generations. But just in case you've been missing, iron lungs, the Republican Party is raring to go this election year with a new measles and polio for all the kids plan. And what swing state busy mom and dad isn't going to want to get the whole family to lick that doorknob and vote GOP this November with that kind of platform on offer to the American people? Can we get a smallpox over here? How about some tetanus for the little ones? Whooping cough like it's going out of style. I do want to give the Missouri Republican Party a little bit of a shout out, though. A little salute, a little stiff-armed salute, perhaps. This gentleman, not the one in the Klan robe with a sheet over his head, but the guy next to him. And you can see him also in this photo. He is not the guy with the full Klan neo-Nazi uniform on with the tie on the right. No, he's the guy next to him. You can see if you put the images next to each other, he's got the same little thing on in both images, the glasses around his neck on those like croquis style things. Yeah, so that guy, the one who, with the burning cross behind him, is making the Roman salute with the Klansmen, and then in the other photo with the neo-Nazi uniform guy in front of the neo-Nazi flag, he is running for the Republican nomination for governor of the great state of Missouri. And I said I wanted to shout out the Missouri Republican Party here, and I do, because they are now frantically trying to remove him from the ballot. So the neo-Nazi Klan guy can't be their Republican nominee for governor. Once they announced that they were trying to get him off the ballot, he responded this weekend saying, quote, "The GOP knew exactly who I am." Republicans in Missouri, including the Missouri Secretary of State, are trying to get him off the ballot now fast, while also trying to explain away what appear to be themselves, like taking pictures with that guy. While he says, "You knew exactly who I was." You want one from Georgia? In Georgia, Republicans there are on the cusp of approving a new license plate, a new official license plate for the state of Georgia. And this one comes with a little history. In 1944, right, this is the apex of the Allies' final push to defeat the Nazis and win World War II. When FDR was running for his fourth term in office, the Republicans ran Thomas Dewey against him in the 1944 election. There was also a third party in the mix in 1944. They ran a preacher for president in 1944 who called himself a Christian nationalist. He ran on a platform that said that all American Jews should be forcibly sterilized and then deported from the United States. That party was called the America First Party. Around the same time, there was also an organization called America First Incorporated, America First Inc. The leader of that group received a patent for a club that he said was specifically designed to murder Jews in America. He patented it in men's and ladies' sizes. He called it the Kike Killer, forgive me. He ran an organization called America First Inc. Both those organizations, the America First Party and America First Inc., in the 1940s were trying to capitalize on the notoriety and the name recognition of the America First Committee, which had at one point been very popular in the United States, but it started to wobble a little bit after its chief spokesman in 1941, Charles Lindbergh, gave a big speech in Iowa saying the only reason we were going to end up fighting in World War II is because the Jews were going to make us do it. The America First Committee and the America First Party and America First Inc. Georgia Republicans are about to approve a new taxpayer-supported official state Georgia license plate that says America First on it. The Republican Party is kind of amazing right now. No matter where you look, no matter what state you look, contraception, if you're trying not to have a baby, that's over. IVF, if you're trying to have a baby, that's over too. The Holocaust denier should be the Republican nominee for governor. The sterilize the Jews and deport them movement should be memorialized on official state Georgia license plates. We want really, really, really small government that's nevertheless big enough to make an Oklahoma state registry of every woman who's ever had an abortion, and we'll tell you later what we're going to do with it. Slaves had it great, actually. Slavery wasn't so bad. Let Florida Republicans tell you about it. It's retirees. It's the AARP that's the real evil in America. Tetanus and measles, honestly, they're kind of cute when it's for babies. And did I mention that on Friday, the leader of the Republican Party, the next Republican presidential nominee, is going to host at his home the authoritarian dictator of Hungary? Because dictators are kind of a thing for those guys right now, like polio is. We're back. I mean, the Republican Party is going through some things right now. Right up to the top, and in every state in the country.
It is Tuesday, the 5th of March of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. I like to get those taglines out of the way with a little bit of dramatic flair on occasion. Speaking of dramatic flair, notice how the originalists on... Notice how I make these giant leaps from one topic to another? Well, let's go! Have you ever noticed how the originalists on the MAGA SCOTUS are so original that their whole originalism all this time has been a fiction? Yeah, if you make something too original, it's not the truth anymore. It's a fiction. And of course, we all knew it was a lie. So when the Colorado Supreme Court crafted their decision in the language of originalism, that offended the originalists so much on the MAGA SCOTUS that their knee-jerk reaction is to kick the lib. So what did they do? Yeah. They pretty much flipped us all off and said, we know that you knew that we were lying. What are you going to do about it? Well, apparently we can't do shit. Except for one thing. And that's to come out in such massive numbers when we vote that there's no margin for them to dick around with. Because they can only dick around if there's a slight margin to dick around with. That's why, in spite of Trump's protestations over these few years, that he was not able to secure the presidency the last time, because Joe beat him by about 7 to 8 million votes. We would need more, I believe. And not because we need to pad it, but I want to give a big middle finger to MAGA. I'm tired of pretending that we have to care about their feelings. They think they're the silent majority, and like the silent majority back in the day, they were neither a majority nor were they silent. They were the typical toxic third of American politics whose outside power and influence is only matched by the loudly way they whine every day, all day. Whine, whine, whine. There's a bill that's I don't even think it's going to get out of committee, but it has sent the right-wing anti-tax, anti-government, kick-the-lib MAGA types into a tizzy here in Oregon. A bill has been proposed to pretty much modify some acts in which, or procedures that used to be handled by the DHS but has now been kicked to the states for the counties to pretty much take care of. So in this process of moving this program from DHS through the Department of Children and Human Services on the state level, they've sort of updated who qualifies for assistance, consultation, a little bit of help as they transition from a country in which has been taken over by the Taliban, and that would be Afghanistan. We're talking about Afghani refugees who helped our military for 20-some-odd years, who were not able to make the few planes that Trump allowed Joe to have. Let's remember, Trump drew down our troops just before he was kicked out of office, so that and sunset the whole thing so that Joe had no choice anyway except to pull out of Afghanistan. So the few planes that were able to take our interpreters and other military personnel that were Afghani, that were our allies. Well, couple of years and people are finally making it from over there to here, as is their right. And they passed through the vetting situation, and now they're being dispersed among the various states. And the various states have to now make their administration, bring them in. Fold them into existing programs that you have already to attend to these actual Afghani refugees. So, of course, the right-wing MAGAs here, their propaganda, the first thing they put up is that we're going to give illegal aliens free rent. That's what they're selling now. And of course, white nationalist types all say, one guy came on, and I'm going to mention this guy a little bit further here, because I got to dig in to see who's responding to things like this. Now, what I did is that I actually posted from the Oregon State House, the committee that was hearing this and what this actual bill is. And it's to bring in Afghani refugees who are part of our military, who are now finally making it here because we didn't have room on the few planes that were able to get out, to bug out. There were no helicopters falling off destroyers. Yeah, they tried to land on a destroyer in Vietnam. Think about that. And aircraft carriers, etc. There were none of that. A couple C-10s, is that what they are? The big ones? Troop transport. They're finally making it here. So, of course, they got to be illegals. And since they're Afghanis, I guess, they're terrorists too. We're going to start hearing about that. Even though they were our military. Our allies. Which in the MAGA mind says that they are our enemies, and our enemies are supposed to be their allies. Why? Because we've treated them so poorly over all these many years. We've disrespected them. Well, maybe, you give us reasons for it. I'm tired of this whining from these. They're not Americans. Home of the brave, my ass. So there's one guy that I mentioned posted, "Welcome to Oregon, now go home." Of course, I don't want to feed the trolls. But let me just say this, since I'm not feeding that troll. No room at the inn, pal? Because I went to your Facebook page and profile. Big old burly biker. Well, I've been called a big old burly biker when I'd spend some time in Europe. Maybe not now because I'm kind of an old guy. But who knows? This guy was an old guy too. Big burly guy. To be honest with you, I've never been intimidated by those big burly guys because I am one. Jesus. I mean, I'm not 6'8", but, I've had to go up against 6'8" guys before. Hasn't everybody who's big and burly. So I'm not intimidated by that BS. So, of course, he's got the requisite, fealty to who he thinks is Christian God. I don't even think he has Jesus there, but he'll intone the name. And then further down, I saw a post that he proffered or considered what would happen if a group like White Lives Matter rampaged through the cities and started tearing down black statues and other things. White Lives Matter. Because you know where this is going, right? Those darkies. But if we did it, what would happen? Well, I don't want to feed the trolls. I don't want to go on to the Rogue River Facebook page and tell this guy and give him some fuel to be able to keep breathing. Because if you don't respond, they wither away. Not always, but Yeah, we have a white group that has been doing that for quite some time, and they're called the KKK, pal. Which I'm sure, if given the opportunity, this fellow would have no problem joining if he isn't already. Might not call it the KKK, might just call it whatever his motorcycle club he belongs to. Bunch of geezers on their Harleys. Gonna go for a Saturday ride. Sunday, too. Okay. Your kidneys, pal. It's your kidneys. So there's just so much wrong with all of that. We know it. But I guess maybe I was too young to notice the vitriol, and we didn't have the type of social media back then that we have now. You had to actually join like a newsletter to get this BS, I suppose. But when the Vietnamese were brought here and given a leg up and got some 7-Eleven franchises and became part of the American dream, I suppose there were a lot of people who said, get them out of here, they're terrorists, or whatever it was that we decided to call. Now, I know what we call them, I'm not going to say it. All sorts of racist nomenclature for the Vietnamese. Terrible. And those people now want to make sure that their kids are not made to feel bad because they have to have empathy or should have empathy for a fellow human being, especially ones that we left in harm's way. No room at the end, pal? Okay. All right, enough of that. What do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this Tarrytown Chowder Tuesday, Super Tuesday? Yeah, I still like to see what kind of turnout Trump gets. You know, we'll see. And how Joe will win by, tremendous amounts wherever he's running. And even in the states where he's not running and they write him in, will we hear about the enormous success that he will have? We'll see. I doubt it. Okay, well, Rachel at the top did give us a few items of how the Republican Party is going through a few things in their precipitous lurch to even further right to the right that they've ever thought that they were possible of doing. Maybe they always knew what they were. They do. On the rest of the menu, speaking of which, a federal appeals court blocked the Florida anti-DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Stop Woke Act, calling it a First Amendment sin. Two San Francisco Bay Area high school journalists say their principal illegally interfered and censored them while reporting on sexual harassment. And a 6th grade girls basketball team from northern Kentucky was banned from a boys basketball league after romping through the regular season to reach the championship game. Yeah. The guys who are running this league thought the little boys would be hurt so terribly that they might want to beat up the girls. Is that what you're teaching the boys? You have terrible coaches, let me just say. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Polish Prime Minister sharply criticized the Hungarian and Slovak foreign ministers for a meeting with Russia's Sergei Lavrov on the same day Alexei Navalny was buried. And a key hearing on restructuring the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority's staggering $9 billion debt has finally begun. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Going to forego the usuals that we usually usually go with at this juncture and tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And it is out of the Washington Post by Anamita Kaur. A federal appeals court yesterday, Monday, upheld a ruling that blocked Florida from enforcing a law backed by Ron DeSantis that restricts how private companies teach diversity and inclusion in the workplace. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the very conservative, I might add, 11th Circuit ruled that the Stop Woke Act exceeds the bounds of the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment right to freedom of speech and expression in its attempts to regulate workplace trainings on race, color, sex, and national origin. The appeals court upheld a federal judge's August 2022 ruling that said the same. By limiting its restrictions to a list of ideas designated as offensive, the act targets speech based on its content. And by barring only speech that endorses any of those ideas, it penalizes certain viewpoints, the greatest First Amendment sin. Judge Britt C. Grant wrote in Monday's opinion. The Stop Woke Act was approved by the Republican-controlled legislature in March of 2022. The act was one of DeSantis's top priorities, and before he dropped out as a possible candidate for president in 2024, it was a routine talking point on the campaign trail. Also referred to as the Individual Freedom Measure, the Stop Woke Act prohibits trainings in workplaces, public schools, colleges, and universities that could lead someone to feel guilty or ashamed about the historic actions of their race or sex. A violation of the act is an offense under state anti-discrimination laws. You can't discriminate against whining white guys. Monday's ruling focused on the workplace-related provision of the law after Florida-based companies filed a lawsuit against the state. Honeyfund.com, an online wedding registry website in Clearwater, argued in court that the law would prevent it from holding an employee seminar about women's advancement in business and institutional racism. Primo, a franchise of Ben & Jerry's ice cream stores with stores in Clearwater and Tampa, argued that it would be prevented from teaching employees about systemic racism, oppression, and intersectionality. DeSantis had framed the Stop Woke Act as a tool for employees to stand up against discrimination. He and attorneys for the state argued in court that the measure is a ban on conduct, private companies' requirement that employees attend such meetings, not speech. According to Monday's opinion, Grant, who was appointed by the former President Donald Trump, disputed that claim. I told you the 11th Circuit's pretty darn conservative. This is a Trump appointee. Florida's attempts, and this is the Donald Trump appointee, Grant, their attempts to repackage its act as a regulation of conduct rather than speech do not work, Grant wrote in the opinion. Even if we presumed that the act served the interest of combating discrimination in some way, its breadth and scope would doom it. Banning speech on a wide variety of political topics is bad. Banning speech on a wide variety of political viewpoints is worse. Grace Tui, a staff writer at the Los Angeles Times, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 student journalists from a Bay Area high school are suing their principal and district, claiming they were illegally intimidated while reporting on a story about sexual harassment for the school's newspaper. The advisor of the student-run newspaper is also part of the suit, alleging she was retaliated against when she did not go along with the campaign of censorship aimed at the students' reporting, according to the complaint filed last week in the Santa Clara County Superior Court. The lawsuit was filed against the Mountain View Los Gatos High School District and Mountain View High Principal Kip Glazer, calling her an overbearing high school principal accused of bullying, threatening, and the coercion of student journalists. Glazer did what she could to silence the student journalists and effectively to silence the victims of sexual harassment at Mountain View High School, the complaint said. Jean-Paul Jassy, the attorney for the students and advisor, has represented reporters at the Times in other cases. Glazer did not respond to a request for comment from the Times, nor did the district superintendent's office, because when do they ever? The 2 students who filed the lawsuit, Hannah Olson, now a co-editor-in-chief at the school's paper, and Hayes Duno, a former student reporter for the newspaper, who's now a freshman at UC Riverside, are seeking no financial damages in the case, but want to ensure student journalists at the school will be free of censorship in the future. Getty's Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A 6th grade girls basketball team from northern Kentucky was banned from a boys basketball league after romping through the regular season to reach the championship game. The squad from Next Level's girls basketball notched a 7-1 record in a citywide basketball league run by Southwestern Ohio Basketball and was preparing for the championship when league president Tom Sunderman notified the athletic academy that it would be too risky to let them play for the title, and that was reported by WVXU-FM. Doing this for 28 years, what we have worried about is a boys' team losing to a girls' team, especially in the year-end tourney. They may get frustrated and retaliate against a girl, Sunderman said in a statement with a ridiculous accent made up right here on the spot. Then we have liability issues. Really? You can't teach your boys to be good sportsmen? Huh? Sunderman said he coached against a team of boys from Next Level in the first game, and he said the team's gender was listed as male in its registration, but he said the rest of the games were played by girls. We entered them into the league assuming they were a boys' team, as conveniently no roster was ever provided, Sunderman said in a statement, without the accent this time. Subsequently, their first game was filled in by a boys' 6th grade Next Level team. It wasn't until January, early February, that several teams from the 6th grade division started traveling down to Kentucky to play their scheduled games, and it became apparent that the Next Level team was in fact a girls' team, and they kept beating us. Oh no! Next Level director Larry McGraw said he never felt the girls were in danger, but he said they faced gender-based scorn during the season. They got giggles, they got laughs, and people talked about them. You know the looks, McGraw said. There's a lot of that, and I think this was a great opportunity for them to say, yeah, we're pretty darn good and you should respect us. The league offered the team a chance to play in another year-end tournament, but just for girls. But the club turned that down and removed all of its other teams from the league's tournaments in protest. Well, good. All right, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For older adults, optimal aging includes preventing injuries, effectively managing existing chronic conditions, and maintaining physical and cognitive health and social engagement. I'm Dr. Linda Anderson, Director of CDC's Healthy Aging Program. The promotion of cognitive health is a critical component of overall good health. Cognitive health among older adults is not just the absence of disease. It's the development and preservation of cognitive abilities such as memory, language, judgment, and remembered skills such as driving. Cognitive abilities enable individuals to maintain social connectedness, an ongoing sense of purpose, and the ability to function independently. In 2013, CDC and the Alzheimer's Association released the second in a series of roadmaps. This roadmap, the Public Health Roadmap for State and National Partnerships 2013 to 2018, was developed as part of CDC's Healthy Brain Initiative. It reflects the insights and expertise of a wide range of stakeholders at the national, state, and community levels. The roadmap shares the Healthy Brain Initiative's vision of cognitive health as a vital component of overall health and well-being, an area ripe for public health efforts. Specific actions are addressed in 4 traditional domains of public health. The first is monitor and evaluate. Tracking the health of the nation is a fundamental public health function. Actions in this area include assessments related to cognitive health that help quantify and qualify the public health impact and inform public health policies and strategies. The second domain is educate and empower the nation, which focuses on actions that raise public awareness and improve access to information and resources. The third domain, develop policy and mobilize partnerships, includes actions aimed at ensuring that cognitive health is integrated into a broad spectrum of public health work. The fourth area, assure a competent workforce, focuses on preparing public health professionals to translate current and emerging findings on cognitive health into effective public health practice. This roadmap provides a solid foundation for the public health community to anticipate and respond as new scientific discoveries related to cognitive health emerge. Public health agencies and partners are encouraged to work together on actions that best fit their mission, needs, interests, and capabilities. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/aging/healthybrain.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets and you. You are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Let's reflect for a minute on the recent remarks of Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Justice Kagan, during a public conversation at the Library of Congress, avoided saying anything directly relevant to any case before the court. But she did articulate decision-making principles and powerfully shared her perspective on the court discarding precedent. Justice Kagan said, "When the law flip-flops after change in personnel on the court, it doesn't look like law anymore. It looks like a form of politics." She continued, "And I think that's especially important for this Supreme Court at this time. Law should not look like a form of politics, where just because the composition of the court changes, a whole batch of legal rules change with it." Justice Kagan added, "When what was once a right is no longer a right because the court is different, I think that's very damaging to the court, very damaging to society." Justice Kagan did not mention any one of the dozens of examples where this Supreme Court has reversed or dramatically changed long-standing law, but, as Adam Liptak wrote in the New York Times, it was a good bet that the court's 2022 decision overruling Roe v. Wade was among one of the ones on her mind. And let us add, ours too.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In a unanimous decision March 4th, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the decision of the Colorado Supreme Court to remove Donald Trump from the Colorado state ballot, ending state efforts to enforce the 14th Amendment, Section 3. The court punted to Congress to enforce the 14th Amendment, saying, quote, "The Constitution empowers Congress to prescribe how those determinations should be made. The relevant provision is Section 5, which enables Congress, subject to judicial review, to pass appropriate legislation to enforce the 14th Amendment." The court majority also noted that the states did in fact use the 14th Amendment to disqualify state candidates, but that, quote, "Such power over governance, however, does not extend to federal office holders and candidates." Both the decision and a concurrence by Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson expressed concern that if the states had the power, it would result in a patchwork of decisions which could affect the outcome of the election. But the concurrence raised alarms that the conservative majority overreached. Quote, "Although we agree that Colorado cannot enforce Section 3, we protest the majority's effort to use this case to define the limits of federal enforcement of that provision. It's unlikely Congress would agree on any legislation to disqualify former President Donald Trump." We have a link to the decision at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972. That was the day auto workers at GM's Chevy Vega plant in Lordstown, Ohio, walked out on strike. The strike lasted for 18 days. The issues that fueled it were reminiscent of the sit-downs and wildcats that built the UAW in the 30s and 40s. Workers at Lordstown wanted greater control over the production process. The young, integrated workforce of the 1960s social protest era was fed up with long days, forced overtime, increased automation, and dangerous speed up on the assembly line. Long-standing grievances numbered in the thousands, and disciplinary firings were common. Absenteeism was rampant, morale was so low that cars left the assembly line incomplete or vandalized. By the time the strike ended, many felt it was called simply to allow workers to blow off steam. There was no real change in the production process, but jobs eliminated in the 1970 contract were restored, and some 1,400 disciplinary layoffs were dropped. The worker malaise suffered there came to be known as the Lordstown Syndrome. In his book, Staying Alive, the 1970s and the Last Days of the Working Class, Jefferson Cowie notes that the strike compelled the Senate to hold hearings on alienation at work. Its committee produced the report Work in America. This report confirmed many workers at all occupational levels feel locked in. Their mobility blocked, the opportunity to grow lacking in their jobs, challenge missing from their tasks. Cowie concludes that the strike and report initiated the quality of work-life movement that sought to redesign work, introduce automation differently, and invest in human relation strategies, most of which continued to empower management, not workers, albeit with a gentler hand.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, continuing with an active winter storm warning, cloudy conditions with a mix of snow and rain right now, currently, and will be changing to all rain this afternoon. Highs maybe in the low 40s. I don't know if it'll get that high. Winds light and variable. Expecting 3/4 to an inch of rain when it turns into full rain. Rain showers this evening, mixing with snow showers overnight. Lows in the low 30s, winds light and variable. And then cloudy skies early tomorrow, followed by partial clearing. A few flurries or snow showers possible, highs in the mid-40s, winds light and variable. Pollen is rated as none here in our little hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index is still in the good range at 21 parts per million, though that daytime UV index has ticked up into the moderate range at level 3. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.93 inches. Visibility is at 4 miles and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 50 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 49 degrees and cloudy with a flood watch. Rome is 58 and partly cloudy with a flood watch. Bagram is 28 degrees and cloudy. Hong Kong is 54 degrees with rain. Tokyo is 35 degrees with rain. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 63 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and partly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 41 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory, and New York, New York is 43 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk yesterday, Monday, sharply criticized the Hungarian and Slovak foreign ministers for meeting with their Russian counterpart during a regional forum in Turkey. Tusk said that meeting Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov on the same day that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was buried in Moscow was, quote, not just an expression of good or bad taste, end quote. The issue of feasting on the day of Alexei Navalny's funeral is just another sign of the Hungarian government, which we find difficult to accept for moral and political reasons, Tusk told a news conference. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó and Slovak Foreign Minister Juraj Balaner met with Lavrov on Friday during the Italia Diplomacy Forum gathering. Szijjártó posted details of their dinner on his social media profile. Colleagues in Bratislava and Budapest prove once again that our opinions on certain issues are too different, Tusk said. Certainly regarding the attitude toward Russia and the attack on Ukraine. Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė, who met with Tusk, called the meeting with Lavrov a regrettable choice. Central European countries are deeply divided over the Russian war against Ukraine and how to resolve the conflict, while Poland and the Czech Republic are united in staunch support for Ukraine, including arms deliveries. Hungary and Slovakia have sharply different views.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Danica Cotto of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A key hearing over the future of Puerto Rico's crumbling power company and its staggering $9 billion debt began yesterday, Monday, in federal court, following years of acrimonious talks between the U.S. territory's government and creditors seeking to recover their investments. The hearing, which is expected to last up to 2 weeks, will focus on a proposed debt restructuring plan. It comes nearly 7 years after Puerto Rico's government filed for the biggest bankruptcy in U.S. municipal history, after announcing it was unable to pay its more than $73 billion debt following decades of corruption, mismanagement, and excessive borrowing. Scores of protesters gathered outside the courthouse before the hearing, decrying that power bills, already among the highest in a U.S. jurisdiction, would increase again if the plan is approved, leading to an even higher cost of living in the U.S. Caribbean territory. Every dollar we pay bondholders is a dollar that is not available for the energetic transformation that Puerto Rico urgently needs, Juan Rosario, who previously represented consumers on the power company's board, said before the hearing. The island of 3.2 million people is still struggling through chronic power shortages more than 6 years after Hurricane Maria pummeled Puerto Rico as a powerful Category 4 storm, raising its electrical grid. Officials have noted that aging infrastructure and a lack of maintenance also is to blame, with Puerto Rico currently relying on generators from the federal government to help meet its energy needs. More than 800 people have objected to the debt restructuring plan in a document that lawyers filed in court, and more protests are expected. The plan, was crafted by a federal control board appointed by Congress to oversee Puerto Rico's finances. In a meeting held days before the hearing, Robert Mujica, the board's executive director, called the plan fair and equitable. That remains to be seen, with Judge Laura Taylor Swain yesterday, Monday, hearing from an array of attorneys who have noted that the majority of creditors don't approve of the plan. Swain also is scheduled to hear from Puerto Rican retirees, business owners, and others later today. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.